Fire away.
You had talked going into the joint practice about just having more of a chance to see what your players, what your defense can do. What did you take out of the joint practice specifically?
Yeah, I thought that was great. What we got out of it, talking to Coach Munkin, like that's what they wanted as well. Just learning. Anytime you get a new offense, right, you see how players react and what their natural instincts are, right? You go through camp and you see the same offense and they learn, right? They get better at seeing it. So you kind of get to see another day one where it's a different offense and you see the natural reactions of certain guys, kind of how they see certain blocks or just the communication on the field. So that's really valuable for me, just kind of truly testing where they're at when they get a little bit more uncomfortable.
What did you learn about them?
I thought we handled a lot of adjustments well within that joint practice. And then during the game, I thought the first drive we didn't. So it was interesting just to see how it was. You felt like there'd be a little bit more of a comfort zone in the game when it was actually less than what we saw in the practice. But I love the energy. Our guys went out there. They wanted to be physical. They rose up to that challenge. And it was a big week, having the big practice in our stadium, having the joint practice in the game. So just a ton of film to evaluate last week. That was big for us as a staff.
Jim, what do you attribute what feels like Jordan Hancock's ascension maybe the last couple of weeks? He's been flashing, he's been making plays. Where do you see him ultimately fitting in, whether it's safety or nickel, and why do you think that he's been on this ascension?
Yeah, he's a confident player. Like he's going to make quick decisions and play fast. He's going to make mistakes, right? There's things that aren't always clean, but he makes fast decisions and he's going to live with the results. And you respect that as a coach, right? You have to kind of take some of the hard edges off sometimes, but you do know that he's going to impact the game and he's going to fly around and he's going to set the tone. So it's just finding the right amount of snaps, the right roles for him. Obviously, he has to be a little bit of a Swiss Army knife right now as far as learning safety, learning the nickel position, right? There's other grouping packages that we could get him in and do different things that kind of are that hybrid type of role as well. He's handling it well. And I told you he was going to be one of the biggest evaluations this camp because he did miss the offseason, right? And anytime you have guys that miss snaps on the field, like you got to play a little bit of catch up as far as the evaluation, and he's doing a great job.
And like at any position, it doesn't just have to be Jordan and like D, who's kind of like seems like the starter there. Is it challenging when you have like a guy that might be behind on the depth chart where you want to get him on the field, but you got to kind of create ways to do it maybe?
That's the fun part of coaching to me. It's being creative, using the players you have, right? Every day or every game you get into and there's a situation that pops up where you're one injury or you're one guy having a bad performance away from a lot of pieces moving around, right? And I think that's always the fun part of being a coach in the NFL is you only have a limited amount of bodies, right? You get into games and there's sometimes a guy backing up multiple positions and just how you're going to play that out and, making adjustments and maybe something that you thought was going to work really well going into the game, you're not getting production out of it and you got to make adjustments. So it's huge for me, having a handful of guys that have a flexible skill set. The more players you have like that in different groups, the better.
How would you evaluate Wayne Carter's training camp preseason?
I think he's getting comfortable, right? As far as coming off of the injury, I thought early he was kind of feeling it out and just trying to make sure the health was going to be there. Physically changed his body, put on a little bit of weight and some strength, and then after the first 3 or 4 days, I think he's had a big rise. Huge game, right? Huge game. Physical at the point of attack, played hard, run into the football. It was really fun to watch him play because anytime you get guys that know they're in the situation where they got to have a good performance and they go out there and put it on tape, I think guys feed off of it, and it was just great to see.
Your evaluation moving forward, how much does your evaluation moving forward have to be a projection because he's still coming off?
Yeah, that's obviously a part of it. You're getting farther away from the injury date, so you feel like you have a little bit more information as far as the health of the player. But it's obviously part of it. Anytime you miss that amount of time, it's going to take a little bit of time to knock the rust off. And it's the unfortunate side of the NFL is you got to make decisions fast and quickly. And just mentioned it with other groups. There's only so many guys that make it to game day. There's so many guys that make it to that 53. So you have to create balance within the room. And if you want pieces to move, it's like, who is the guy going in to allow the flexibility of maybe somebody else. So, but I'm proud of the way he's played, and he had a big game this last week.
And Dreesen's one of those guys who missed time in the spring. How have you seen him handle you asking him to play on both inside spots and maybe his growth in the system since he started camp?
He's a really good football player. It's fun. You maybe have a certain perception when you're not here or just getting in, and he's a dynamic special teamer, and that's kind of role number one for him. But just to see the instincts he has at linebacker, it's really cool to see. And having a guy that is going to be a big piece of that special teams puzzle, also be able to function at either linebacker spot, it's huge. Again, just for the just in case situations that come up. But he flashes with his physicality. He flashes with his playmaking. There was a stretch he made 3 or 4 plays in a row, and that's really cool to see. And you see the guys feed off of that.
Seems like it's developed into a pretty open competition with Caleb and Dorian. Where do you think things stand right there between those two?
Yeah, I think it's still close. They're both playing at a high level. And from a communication standpoint and a leadership, physicality, they're very similar as far as what they bring to that. And I think it's going to be one of those things that continues to carry on forward. Tush said last week was a lot of reps to evaluate. And now that they're both healthy and feeling confident in what we're asking them to do, it's just going to continue to push forward early in the season as well. I think both players at this point have earned the right to get on the field. And it's just figuring out what the best way to do that and what the packages look around that.
Could you envision almost like a rotation between them two at some point, or is that what you're referring to?
I think that's possible. I'm not saying that's 100% what's going to happen, but if you said you had to pick a winner right now, I don't think we'd be able to do that.
Jim, coming from a former player's perspective, what's your message to, especially to the younger players as we approach the final preseason game as they fight for a roster spot?
It's the hardest week in the NFL, right here. I've been on both sides, right? I've made rosters, I've been cut from rosters, and everyone understands what happens at the end of this week where there's a lot of seats, there's a lot of players that are in the building that there's not spots for. And it's tough when you're on a really good team, right? Team that knows how to win, that has depth, has some pretty defined roles in some areas. But as coaches and players, I think as long as you're professional about it and go about your business, it is one of those things. It doesn't get easier. Like I was through it a lot of times as a player and now some as a coach, and it's always difficult because there's guys that have earned the right to be here that just don't have a spot. And your goal as a coach is like, how many of these players make it on a roster, right? You want to get the best grouping and the best mix for your current team, right? But everyone else you're pulling like crazy for to just put something on tape that somebody's going to take a chance on them.
Jim, how do you feel like Michael Hoyt made it through those increased reps in the joint practice?
Yeah, it was fun to watch. He had a dynamic day in that joint practice, and the more he gets on the field, just you see the subtle things in his game that it's really fun to coach a guy like that, and extremely smart. I mean, he can communicate within a drive to players on the sideline, what he sees, what he hears. Really fun to watch a guy like Mike go out there and just kind of take the handcuffs off and let him go play. And he's ready. He's fired up. He's begging for certain things and different packages and stuff like that. Kind of, he knows that we can get in with the talent that we have, and it's roles that he's done in the past.
Hey, Jim, you've had great games for a handful of days now. What have you seen from him both on and off the field?
He knocked the rust off fast. Anytime you get a guy that wasn't in a training camp, you're going to be safe and just try to figure out where their conditioning's at. At that position, it's not going to be the learning, like what he needs to do. And the muscle memory took over real fast, and he made some big plays in the game and in the joint practice. But you have to be smart because he missed a good amount of time in the offseason just to make sure that you continue to progress as this goes on. But I love where he's at, man. And he's a vet. He's been through a lot of battles, and I think he'll be good for the groom.
Is Takori another guy that's gotta be a little Swiss Army knife? He was playing safety, I think, on the pick, but he's done a little bit of everything over the last couple of years.
Absolutely. That's what his role would have to be, right? And he's damn good at it, right? He has some nickel ability, and obviously he gets the interception playing safety. He was one of our top special teamers coming out of the game, right? He had the game he needed to have, which was awesome to see. He's a great guy. Everyone respects what he does, and for him to flash the playmaking ability in multiple phases and in different roles throughout camp, that's a very valuable piece for a team.
You got a pretty good long look at TJ Parker during the game as well. Just where do you feel like things stand with him at this point in the summer?
Yeah, TJ's in a great place. He knows who he is. Like, that's the fun part. You get a pass rusher, an outside linebacker that he understands the strengths of his game and how to play to them. He knows offensive lines and sets. Like, he's a very mature player as far as what his knowledge of himself and his knowledge of offenses and how he has to attack. So I like where he's at. I'm sure he wants more production, right? He wants more snaps. He's a guy that you want to just continue to feed more to, and he'll get more comfortable. But very pleased with where he's at. You know, he put in a ton of work in the offseason with his body and his understanding of the playbook, and I think from day one of camp, he's been able to play at a high level.
So you guys are really young at cornerback beyond Christian Benford. Are you comfortable with that group rolling into week one, or is that a concern for you guys?
Yeah, it's still concerning to me, just the whole secondary, because it's been limited snaps with everybody, right? We had that in the offseason with the safeties being out, and now in camp, it's the same thing. Cole's missed time, CJ's missed time, Max has been out for a lot. So it's more just how they gel and how they communicate, and continuing to build up reps here from now until Houston. So it's always concerning when you're not banking those reps with what you'd probably consider to be the starting group out there. But it is what it is. I like the mentality of the group, the energy in that group. It's fun coaching a young group sometimes because they're constantly striving for more. They want more information. They're not kind of a group that's like, I got it, coach. Just leave us alone and let us play. So they want more, and that's all you can ask for. They're hungry, and I think that's led to a pretty competitive battle for a lot of guys. And I think the players like IGB, who are getting more snaps because of it, Kanai Walker, like, they're taking advantage of it. So they're going to make it fun to make these decisions going into the season on what the roles need to be. And to me, there's so many different positions where it's like, what's the pitch count, right? Is it a full game? Is it 40 snaps? Is it 20 snaps? Like, that's going to be a lot of the big conversations with the staff for a number of players, not just corner, but a lot of different positions.
Jim, based on what you're saying, with a lack of experience and guys being in and out, you want to be aggressive, but that does put more pressure on the back end. Does that impact you now implementing kind of what you see this defense being, especially early in the year, until you know what you really got back there?
Yeah, I think there's always a learning curve, and you have to be willing to make adjustments. And, you know, biggest thing over 2 games that I'm pleased with how we've stopped the run, right? When you're able to stop the run, and in a lot of situations, we're just running base, you know, split safety coverage and being able to handle the run game up front. If you can do that, you know, then all of a sudden you can be aggressive when you want to, right? Whereas if you're struggling to stop the run and you feel like you have to pressure in order to do that, or you can't cover everybody, so you feel like you have to pressure in order to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands, that's when you get a little bit more predictable. And so far over these 2 games, and it's very primitive game planning at this point, we've been able to stop the run, and that allows us to do a lot of different things from a coverage perspective.
Has anything surprised you about DeMar Hamlin getting a chance to get in the room with him over the last couple months, learning his game and his play?
Yeah, I think he's a better athlete than he gets credit for. He's a guy he's very bright. He understands the game. He knows where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be there. He does a lot of little subtle things as a safety that are not ever on a stat sheet, or they don't get credit as far as how he disguises, how he maybe protects a corner pre-snap and things like that. He's very intelligent that way. Then he's productive. He's around the ball. You know, a number of times here in camp, whether it's tips, overthrows, whatever it is, like, he's always in a position to make a play. So I like where he's at. You know, it's a guy that I didn't necessarily, I knew his game enough getting here, but just seeing the maturity and the professionalism he has, like, it's what you heard, it's what I heard, and he's that and more.
Jim, you talked about the limited reps that the secondary's got together because of injuries. Is there anything else that you can do to simulate the continuity you're trying to build in that back half?
I mean, the number one thing is all the walkthroughs, right? Even when these guys are injured, you're able to get that group out there communicating and the motion adjustments and just trying to be pretty strategic in the meetings as far as how we're getting them to communicate with each other and be on the same page. That's really what you can do. And I think we've had a good plan. These guys are phenomenal in the meeting room. I brought that up a number of times already, just the way that the different groups communicate with each other. So doing everything you can, not being on the field, but at the same time, you know, there's no replacement for actual live reps.
What was it like for you being upstairs and on the sideline on Saturday? Is that something you're potentially going to do moving forward?
Yeah, unique. It was different, right? I've never called a game from up there, so obviously from a vision standpoint, you see things clear. Emotionally, you feel like you're a little detached from the group and from the emotions of the game, which I think can be good or bad, right? And still working through what's the right thing for the group. I have a very mature group of players and coaches that I trust can communicate to where it doesn't, I don't feel like I have to, like sometimes there's one or two things that I was looking for that if there was a red flag here or there, I would guaranteed have to do it a certain way, but still a little bit to be determined on what I plan on doing in Pittsburgh and going into the season, but it went well. I thought the communication was clear and there wasn't too many issues, and it was unique. Cleveland's box is not very big, so it's not an ideal situation sitting up there, but that's not the case everywhere.
When we talked to Christian Benford early on in training camp, he was saying with the two of you, sometimes the conversations are a couple of words, and that's a great conversation for you guys. What have you made of just his personality and just getting to know him more and seeing how he translates that to the field?
Yeah, he's a quiet guy, but he wants to be a leader. And it's really cool to see guys like that who kind of figure out how to do it their way, right? He's never going to be the guy that's out front every day trying to make the you rah-rah speech, but when he speaks up, everybody looks, everybody listens. So, yeah, you see the player he is. He's been very productive for a long time in this league, but I think he's had a strong leadership group around him to where he could kind of just fit in the way that he wanted to do it. And now, just from what I'm hearing, you're seeing him be more assertive and be more vocal. But it's cool to see when guys kind of come out of their shell a little bit and that are well respected, right? And they do it and they seem to have good timing with it. It's a hard time sometimes when you're trying to figure out how you want to be a leader in the group. When you see that they have the timing to say the right thing at the right time, that's really cool as a coach to see. Gino, I love Gino, man. He is a smart football player, and Gino's been battling through some injury stuff, but playing through it, and that's the unfortunate side of what his role is, or the battle he's in for playing time in a roster spot. He's played through some things, but I respect the hell out of his game as far as the intelligence, the communication, very similar to DeMar, where he does so many little things that nobody would ever notice. But as a former safety, as a safeties coach, like, he makes a lot of things right around him, and that's the number one thing. The biggest thing for Gino, he's always finds the football, right? And he hasn't had many opportunities here to go take the football away, and that's probably the number one thing that he'd be trying to look for here as we close out camp in the preseason.
Thanks, Jeff.
Cool.